Hello, Springfield. Welcome to our celebration of America's 250th birthday. Tonight, on what would have been Abraham Lincoln's 217th birthday. 217, pretty cool. My name is Jason Heffley, and I'm the State Director of Americans for Prosperity here in Illinois. This event is part of Americans for Prosperity's One Small Step initiative, which seeks to reconnect Americans to the principles that make America exceptional: liberty, dignity, and prosperity. Before we get to the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, we wanted to debut a brief video that we think epitomizes what the One Small Step campaign is all about. This video, which features several folks in this room, so please congratulate them after you see this video, you will all be very impressed, shows what is possible against long odds when many people come together and take one small step.
It's easy for parents to be underestimated, but when our rights are threatened, we will show up.
This is where it happened. This is where 8,000 people showed up for their children.
The opposition knew they were engaged in a different fight once AFP got involved.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast, a feature of Americans for Prosperity. I'm your host, David Fromm. Seems like once a decade or something, a real threat to homeschooling comes up in Illinois. This one was a little different. This was more invasive, and it was done with the leadership of the Education Committee saying, we want you to register and have potential criminal penalties if you're not doing it the way we want, and we want to be able to track you.
Illinois has been one of the most free states in the nation for homeschool and for education freedom. Illinois House Bill 2027 would have essentially reversed that and made it one of the worst in the nation.
Well, Christy, Matt Black, it's so great to have you guys here. I'm so thrilled for you to join us, and thanks for all that you've been doing in this fight.
Thank you, David, for having us. Yes, so initially, some people were just wondering what was the big deal. What is the harm of having homeschoolers turn in a portfolio? But once we started helping families read the legislation, they were just bewildered.
Here's the kicker. If you didn't register, you could end up facing a fine or even jail time. Jail for not filing one more government form.
AFP obviously works to try and identify the barriers that stand in people's way of achieving their version of the American dream, and this was a barrier to educational freedom. So we saw an opportunity here to mobilize a grassroots army so large that it couldn't be ignored.
I definitely did not intend to homeschool my own children. I was planning to teach in public schools since I was like 7 years old, and I knew I wanted to do that. That was my life goal and passion. I wanted to be that little old lady who was like, I've been teaching here for the last 80 years or something. But just in my time there, I saw that there were so many kids who just needed something different.
My name is Ashton Bandy, and I am the head of the Legislative Task Force with Illinois Christian Home Educators. We are families, we are co-ops, we are groups across the state of Illinois. We want to educate our children according to our convictions, according to our consciences, and when it starts to interfere with what the government wants to do, what happens is this type of legislation.
HB 2827 was a terrible bill. It was so bad. They were intimidating parents from being able to lead their child's education. One of the legislators said, it's a pipeline to prison.
When you have a piece of legislation that basically criminalizes parents when they don't file a piece of paper, everyone needed to take one small step, whether they be student or educator or teacher, and just band together and fight this bill. It was really neat to see everything come together, and Americans for Prosperity was really key to being able to make that happen.
The grassroots army was there, but we just tried to position ourselves as sort of an intermediary connector, if you will, between really the diverse faces from across the state of Illinois of homeschooling, equip them with any resources they needed.
I think lawmakers were shocked at the response and also the tenacity of homeschoolers. They didn't just get one call, they got so many calls.
They had to do things like turn off their phones because so many people were calling.
We were relentless and never took our foot off the gas. This was a persistent effort for over 12 weeks.
We let these legislators know that, you cannot mess with our families.
Christy, you guys, as leader of Team PAC, were one of the organizations who helped really mobilize folks in our communities to show up at the Capitol, to make their voices heard to their legislators.
We thought going into this that hundreds of people would show up at the Capitol, but the amount of people that just turned out, it was incredible.
Over 8,000 parents and families showed up to the Capitol that day. They actually had to shut the doors to the Capitol at a certain point because we had exceeded the fire code maximum for the building. We broke Illinois state record for the highest number of witness slips ever filed on a single piece of legislation.
Everyone did their part. It really was a message too loud to ignore.
So a lot of us have been watching the end of session to see if HB 2827, the homeschool regulation bill, will be called. And I'm happy to tell you right now that the House is adjourned and that bill has not been called. It's been defeated. We've done it.
This victory illustrates the power of how much of an impact people can have, particularly when we're able to equip and mobilize them to take action.
It's just really important to get involved, to connect with groups like Americans for Prosperity, ICHE, Team PAC.
Because of the collaboration that happened, we had so many people just stepping in and saying, no, we're going to fight this.
I'm just a homeschooling mom, and I didn't realize how much my voice could be helpful in this fight.
Just because change doesn't happen easily doesn't mean that it's not worth fighting for. One small step in the right direction, especially when you have a multitude of one small steps, does make a difference.
Use your voice because you never know the impact that you have in your community.
All it took
Was one
Small step.
One of the great things about working at AFP is we get to partner with individuals and organizations who often feel that their liberty and prosperity is at stake. It was an honor to partner with ICHE, HSLDA, Teen PAC, and all of the homeschool families across the state. And while you may not be a homeschool family or may not directly impact you, we face those challenges almost weekly down here in Springfield, and their back was against the wall. So congratulations again, ICHE, HSLDA, Team PAC, We School Academy. Let's give them one more round of applause. That was... And now I would like to welcome up one of the stars of that, Pastor Chris Butler from Ambassador Church, just south of Chicago, to give our opening prayer.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much, AFP. And greetings to you, Illinois. I'm very excited to be here with you. This is my son, Azim. He is also excited to be here with you. And I'm going to keep the assignment and pray. So let's go before the Lord. Gracious God, our Father, we thank you tonight for just your goodness and your mercy, for your love that you show toward us. God, we thank you as we gather in this room tonight to celebrate 250 years of the United States of America. As we gather to celebrate the birth of one of our states and one of our nation's finest, President Abraham Lincoln. And as we gather here tonight to celebrate the hope that we have in you for this land of Lincoln, this state of Illinois, God, we first bring you a heart full of thanksgiving because there are so many times, just like that bill that we just looked at, where it seemed like liberty and freedom would take another hit, and you came through and helped us win unlikely victories. We also bring you, God, a heart full of hope because we believe, God, that even in these dark days, when so much is going wrong in our state, I'm reminded of what you say in the scriptures, that where sin abounds, grace abounds much more. God, we thank you that even in the darkest night is when light shines the brightest. And we know what the gospel says, that the light has shined into the darkness and the darkness does not overcome it. So God, we thank you for the next 250 years of the United States. We thank you for the next years of the state of Illinois. God, we thank you that our best years are not behind us, but before us. God, I pray tonight that you would stir the hearts of every person in this room, that no person will be lost in that vast darkness of despair, but that you would stir our hearts with hope. God, that we would believe again that you have better days, days where liberty and freedom and justice reign supreme in our state and in our country. Thank you for Americans for Prosperity, the national organization, especially those who are laboring here in the state. Will you continue to give grace to every staff person, to every volunteer, to every leader, and will you continue to raise up the quiet revolution that is taking place in the unseen places of our state, that will bring a new wave of freedom to Illinois. We thank you for this, and we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Tonight is Americans for Prosperity's second marquee event. Last month, we started this series in Philadelphia, and we will have one marquee event in different states across the year to celebrate America's 250th birthday. The theme for February is Pursuit of Happiness. Tonight, you will hear from speakers who will hopefully inspire you to make the pursuit of happiness a responsibility. They will talk about how freedom must actively be defended and hopefully invite all of you to see yourselves as the next generation of defenders of the American dream. Our first guest tonight has her own one small step story. Frustrated by a local rule that prevented her from putting a sandwich board in front of her small business, she took a step many of us wouldn't ever consider. She ran for office, being elected mayor eventually of her small town in northwestern Illinois. Today, she's the first female leader of either caucus of the Illinois House of Representatives in its history. She is a ferocious defender of the values and ideals that this country was founded upon. And honestly, we couldn't ask for a better leader or a better partner in fighting for Illinois' future. Please join me in welcoming House Minority Leader Tony McCombie.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, AFP, especially Jason and his team, for kicking off America 250 in such a wonderful way. Thank you, all of you, for showing up. As Jason said, I am Tony McCombie. I am the I have the pleasure of serving as the House Republican leader here in Illinois. It is not every day that I get the honor to introduce somebody throughout their career that has tackled quarterbacks like conservatives attack and tackle woke Democrats. Head on and with no fear. Illinois has a long history of producing strong, resilient leaders, and sometimes legends. For 13 seasons with the Chicago Bears, our next speaker anchored one of the most feared defenses in football. An 8-time Pro Bowler, a Defensive Player of the Year, a Hall of Famer, a linebacker who fought to charge the line. He never played the odds. He played the next down. Even when the scoreboard wasn't in his favor, even when the critics were loud, and even when the odds were against him, he kept fighting. That's not football, that's character, that's leadership. He represents Illinois grit. He didn't give up, he put in the work, never gave up on winning. And as the House Republican leader, I can tell you, when you believe in something bigger than yourself, you put your team first. You stand your ground. You keep fighting when the odds are against you. And that is how you change a game. And that's how we together will change the outcome of our state. So let's please give a warm welcome, one worthy of Soldier Field, for a man who never missed the opportunity to take on a challenge. He never backed down, he never stopped. A man who gives us, who gives me hope in fighting. Ladies and gentlemen, Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher.
Too close, sorry. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be in a room with a bunch of conservatives. We now live in Arizona, so it's not quite as red as I'd like it to be. By the way, this is the first speech I've given since my Hall of Fame speech, so please bear with me. I like doing question and answer, but I definitely can't tell you. I was told to talk about myself, which makes me very uncomfortable. I do not appreciate talking about myself. It's a little stressful for me, so I'll tell my story a little bit. Most of you might know it. If you ever heard my Hall of Fame speech, you might know it, but I'll tell it again tonight, or a little bit of it, with little tweaks, because now I can be open with the way I feel about my Republicanness, so I can open it up and kind of be a little more open. Anyway, it's an honor to be here before you guys tonight. I was born in Pasco, Washington. A lot of people don't know that. And then I moved to New Mexico when my parents got divorced. I would say 7 years old. We moved down there, another liberal state. But I grew up in a conservative area down in Leventon, New Mexico. My mom raised 3 kids, myself, my brother, and my sister. I was the middle child. Single mother, 3 kids. All I ever saw was my mom go to work every day. You know, she worked her butt off so we could, so we could survive, basically. My grandparents lived there, but my mom took care of all 3 of us. That's probably the first time I witnessed what it was like to have hard work, to dedication, to probably commit yourself something bigger than you to her family. She took care of us, a single mother, 3 kids. She was young. My mom had me when she was 18, my sister when she was 17, and my brother when she was 19. So she was a young woman taking care of 3 kids. Until she met my stepfather, they got married when I was probably 8th grade. They got married. Then we had another great influence in our life, and a male figure for us boys, and my brother and I. So we saw another great example of what it was like to have hard work and be successful. My dad went to work every day. I call him my dad. He was my stepdad, but I consider him my real dad. He went to work every day at 5:30, got home at 6, busted his butt in the oil field. Discipline was a big deal around our house. I didn't like getting swats from my mother. I hated it even worse from my dad. And I kind of always thought my dad was kind of a jerk to us because I didn't know why he was so hard on us. I understand now why he was. He wasn't raising weak men. He was raising leaders. And I think having a father present changed the whole outlook of my life. My mom was great, obviously. She raised, like I said, 3 kids by herself. But having a man in the house and someone who was disciplined was a great thing for us. Like, we saw what it took, like I said, hard work and dedication for him and our family. But just him raising men and leaders. He didn't want us to be followers. He wanted us to be leaders. And I believe that's why he was so hard on us. We appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it now. And it suited me well throughout my football career. And my father recently passed a couple years ago, but I appreciate his influence in my life when I was a young man. From Lovington, New Mexico, I played high school football there. I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to the University of New Mexico, where I gladly accepted. It's the only scholarship offer that I had. I busted my tail for 3 years in high school and got an offer from New Mexico. Accepted that. Played 4 years at UNM. Was able to earn All-American status as a DB there, a defensive back, and then luckily enough to get drafted by the Bears, number 9 overall in the 2000, in the 2000 NFL draft. Man, if you'd have told me growing up where I grew up that I was going to have an opportunity to play in the NFL, much less be a first-round draft pick, I would have told you were crazy. No one from where I grew up really gets out of there, so I was excited. Just shows you what hard work can do as well. I set my mind to something, and I dedicated myself to my trade. I busted my tail in high school, busted my tail in college, and it paid off, and I ended up getting drafted by the Bears. 13 amazing seasons in Chicago. Not all great. We were not always good. Believe it or not, we had some struggles. But I think more ups and downs. The thing I remember and cherish the most about playing here was our fans. And I was at the Green Bay game when the Bears beat them the second time this year at Soldier Field in the playoffs. And I have never seen Soldier Field. I played there for 13 years. We had some big games, we had a couple of NFC Championship games, some playoff games, but I've never seen Soldier Field the way it was versus Green Bay in that playoff game. It's a testament to the fans, to the organization, to the city. But the Bears are back. I feel like they're back. They're playing great football. They got a quarterback. It's amazing. Yes, really amazing to finally see that we have a quarterback that could be here for the next 15 years. Coming from a guy who played with 21 different starting quarterbacks in 13 years. It's very exciting to see Caleb doing as well as he has. Ben Johnson's a stud. We got a head coach and a quarterback that are going to feed off of each other for the next, hopefully, 15 years. But like I said, played 13 years here, was able to earn a first ballot Hall of Fame nomination and got in on my first try. So I didn't play football to get into the Hall of Fame. I didn't play football because I wanted to get paid. I played football because I loved it. I love the game. I love being around my teammates. I love my coaches. It did provide a nice lifestyle, I'm not going to lie, for my family. But I just love the game, man. I enjoy going to work every day. I'm not sure how many people can say that, but I really enjoy going to work at 6 a.m. every day, getting the first one in the weight room. It wasn't the last one there in the building, but I was definitely the first one there in the morning, getting in that weight room, and I couldn't wait to be around my teammates, my coaches, our trainers. When I retired, that was the first thing I missed. I didn't miss football. I didn't miss the working out. I didn't miss anything. I missed being around my teammates and my coaches, and everyone striving to have that one goal, which is winning. You play the game to win on Sundays and go out there and be successful. So that's what I missed the most when I retired. Just adjusting and not being around my friends every day. That was tough. And my coaches, my leaders, Coach Smith. But like I said, I was able to get in the Hall of Fame my first try in 2018. Pretty proud of that accomplishment. That's probably the best accomplishment I had in my career, getting on the first ballot with. I was number 317 in the Hall of Fame. I think there's 350 now, so I was the 317th person inducted. Very proud of that. Since I retired from football, quite an adjustment going from working out every day and training to try and get better for football. Now you have all this free time, you don't know what to do with it. My wife and I got married in 2000. I got married when I was 21, divorced when I was 24, when they left that part out of my career there. And then I got married to my current wife now in 2016, so we've been married 10 years in March. 3 kids. We have Pamela, who's 25. She'll be graduating law school in May. She goes to Marquette. My middle daughter's 21. She'll be graduating music school in July. And my son's 20, and he plays football at USC. transferred from Notre Dame last year out to USC. NIL's a crazy thing now with this college football landscape. If you're a college football fan, it's a crazy landscape now. But yeah, so we managed to raise 3 kids that aren't liberals. So that's exciting for me. Got them all. We got them all through college, and they didn't lean the wrong direction so far. My son's got 2 years left, so we'll see how it goes. But we're doing good so far. Let me see. So in retirement, I love playing golf. I still work out a lot, try and stay in shape. It's hard for me, but I like food, but I ride the Peloton pretty much every day. I still lift, and I love to play golf. Also enjoy fishing. We go down to Florida, and we do a little fishing on our boat there. I really enjoy that. But mostly just hang out with my kids in retirement and trying to stay busy. Like I said, it's a big adjustment when you're used to doing something your whole life and it's just kind of taken from you at the last minute. Was never really a political person in my life because I didn't care. I didn't understand it when I was growing up. I knew that my parents worked hard, and that's what I cared about. We had food on the table, and my parents took us to sporting events. The last 8 years, or maybe 11, 9, 10 now, it's really changed the landscape, and I feel like I was made to choose where I wanted to stand, and I feel like I'm standing on the side, being a conservative on the right side of history. I'm very proud and public about where I stand on that, about my beliefs of my, I guess, Republicanship, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know, my political beliefs. I wish more people would stand up and be more vocal with what they believe in. It's kind of hard these days because of everyone wanting to jump on you, and when you say something that they don't like or they don't agree with, at least on our side, it's hard to stand up and say stuff. But yeah, like I said, it was never political growing up. It's a good thing my wife's the same beliefs as me, because if I didn't know when I married her what she was, so I'm glad that we're on the same side, because it'd be a tough place to live if we didn't agree. But I'm very happy to be here and meet a bunch of conservatives. Like I said, most of my friend circles are conservatives, but it's nice to meet a bunch of conservatives in Illinois and be a part of this. So appreciate y'all having me. Have a great night. Oh, happy birthday, America, 250. It's happy to be a part of this, and thank you guys, appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Brian Urlacher one more time. Okay, we're going to do something a little bit different, as you can see. We're going to have a little fireside chat. She is a trusted political analyst, defender of free expression and honest debate, a bulldog in every sense of the word. He wrote his own intro, he's my boss. He is handsome, witty, hardworking, and the host of the American Potential podcast, David Fromm. Please welcome Mary Katharine Ham and David Fromm.
Well, I appreciate Jason at least being factually correct about the looks, I guess, but it's always embarrassing in front of a chat room.
They told me I was following Brian Urlacher, and I was like, awesome, is he like blocking for me? Because I can sprint. I forget that there are so few SEC folks in the room, so but I always got to do my Go Dogs. How you doing?
I'm well. Yeah, you're in the wrong neighborhood for the SEC fans. I'm so thrilled that I had a chance for the podcast before this. Some of you might have seen, to interview Brian Urlacher, and it just occurred to me, I was like, man, who better to talk about defending our nation's freedoms, maybe defending the Illinois taxpayer, than the former Defensive Player of the Year of 2005 and a Hall of Famer. So we need all the defenders we can get, and I'm glad that he's on our side, and I'm super thrilled that he was willing to join us tonight. So now I'm super excited to talk to you, Mary Katharine. You're one of the really articulate, fun, and smart voices in journalism and on Fox News. And if you all don't follow Mary Katharine, especially on X, I would totally advise you to do that and recommend it. But I want to talk about, we're talking about our founding principles, and one of the ones that I love, that I think is really revolutionary in history, was the idea that our rights don't come from a government or a king, that they come from the Creator.
Right.
And I think, we all agree with that. They're inalienable. However, I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in society today who don't agree with that or wouldn't subscribe to that. And unfortunately, based upon the policy that's passed in Illinois or passed in our nation's capital at times, or the ones at least are advocated for, there's a number of people who don't share that view. So how do you see that playing out right now in Congress and in society?
Yeah, first of all, wonderful to be with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I had a lovely drive through this beautiful state on the way here today. I think some of this is just faith, but some of it is also education, right? When you are discussing from whence your rights come, if someone hasn't taught children about the founding, if someone has convinced a bunch of people that the giver is the government, then you're going to run into some problems. And particularly as people of faith become fewer, although I think we're seeing a resurgence among younger people in some sectors, it's going to be harder for people to be educated on that point. I did notice that there was an announcement this week that the EPA, Lee Zeldin, has said that the stop-start function that makes your car stall out at a stop sign or a stoplight will no longer be mandated by the federal government. And sometimes I imagine, like John Adams referred to God as the arbiter of events, the sovereign of the world, from whom our rights come. And that's why they made enumerated powers for the government. And I do wonder if John Adams, well, first you'd have to explain a car to him, and then you'd have to explain a stoplight to him. But then you could say, do you think it's in the government's enumerated powers, the federal government, to tell you how your car should stop or not? That is how far we have come from that original understanding, and I think the founders would probably laugh before they cried about that. But I'm glad it's going away. We're moving in the right direction.
Baby steps, I guess. So another thing that we see in the Declaration that I know we all love, and we're talking about a lot tonight, is the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. So, I think a lot of us can ask ourselves, like, what do we believe the pursuit of happiness to be? What's the American dream for us? And for me, it's evolved as I've had kids. I have a lot of kids, and 11, and so some of us believe in building authentic grassroots communities more than others, but I see it through their eyes now. Like a lot of my view of, what the American dream is really, can they achieve their American dream? Can they pursue happiness the way they want to? And I know you're a mom, and that you probably have had a similar evolution. But what do you think of in the pursuit when it comes to the pursuit of happiness? And then also, how do you perceive government's role in encouraging that or obstructing that, really?
Right. I have 4 kids, which now feels like really rookie numbers. But to be fair, in Northern Virginia, where I live, it makes me very strange. 4 is the number in a place like that where people are like, what's going on with her? Is she some kind of zealot? Love my kids. They're fantastic. You do start to see things through their eyes. And when it comes to pursuing happiness in America, what I always try to explain to them is that we have more choices before us. Even when things aren't going in my state, for instance, of Virginia, exactly as I would wish, we still have this abundance of choices that other societies don't have. And if you don't realize that your society is special in that way, which is something I try to teach my kids all the time, you are at risk of losing it. Someone told me just backstage that the state of Illinois, speaking of happiness and fun, they're interested in taxing that because they're now thinking about a bonfire tax. This is, even in the most liberal place I've ever lived, this one is new to me. And I just think maybe when they heard the Sam Adams quote about the brush fires of freedom, they misunderstood and they were like, maybe we can tax those to death as well. Could we stop this in its tracks? But that's just a small example of the things that make up our pursuit of happiness, right? Having a bonfire without having to ask for a permission slip is a large part of what makes this country great. And Ron Swanson would pull out his permission slip that just says, I'm an American, I can do what I want. And that is the approach you should be taking when people are trying to tax bonfires. I would also say, for my kids, when I look forward and how they want to build their lives, we got a state legislature that is full of people who think they're very smart, but think that they should plan everyone's lives, but haven't thought 1 second what that would actually look like when the bill comes to pass. They just tried to get one through that would have totally crushed homeschool and private school options, and certainly Christian schools, by basically co-opting them into public schools. And I said, let me get this straight. Y'all closed public schools for 18 months, and all of us had to find other solutions, and now you're going to take the solution and turn it into the same problem that I just left? We crushed that bill, though.
That's right. We did the same here. So, no, I think you're exactly right, though. Like, when we think of pursuit of happiness, when we think back to the founders, it wasn't, it was about freedom and liberty, but the practical things a lot of times were economic freedom. Right. It was like taxes and the Stamp Act and other things that, unfortunately, when we think about a lack of liberty just here in Illinois, right. High property taxes, high sales tax, gas taxes out of control, pension debt, runaway spending, things that those are even though those are economic issues, they're sapping our freedom here just in this state. And I'm proud of a lot of the people in this room, because I've known a lot of you for some years, that a lot of you have been standing up and fighting back against this. I'd encourage you to keep doing it, because it works eventually. It works, and I think that you need to there are ebbs and flows, but if we see something from really our revolution, is that a small band of like-minded people with a goal can really achieve amazing things.
Yeah, I think something to remember about the founders is the absolute audacity of taking on the British Empire at that time, right? And I've been reading founding documents and the founders' documents as I go through the year, just to sort of touch base with that. And George Washington is leading up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they're under immense pressure from British troops. They can't get soldiers for more than 6 months at a time. He's having to replace his army and retrain his army all the time. It's cold, it's hard, they're hungry, they're being shot at. The odds were insane. So it helps with our perspective when we're in legislative battles and when things feel like they're not going our way, I think, to think about those guys and what they were up against. John Adams was going 300 miles on horseback from Braintree, Massachusetts to Philadelphia to join with Congress again and start arguing about things. And it was really, really tough, hard road they were on, both literally and philosophically. And so I think we can take heart at the audacity of those guys when we are surrounded by people who don't agree with us, and it looks like the battle is uphill. It can be won.
So there's some other freedoms that we love in the Declaration and the Constitution, but that are under attack. And freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of speech is a big one. And a number of them. There's different battles in society to protect them and to erode them. What do you think is the future there? What do you think is going on right now?
I would say, particularly when it comes to speech, I love being with right-of-center people because they're so used to hearing people disagree with them. They're very well trained in that, and that is the key to making a society work, is being good at that back and forth. And I find when I go to a college campus, for instance, really not trained for that, although it should be a place of inquiry. They haven't heard those things, and they react badly. And I think for all of us, actually as a practical matter, pitching the beauty of freedom to other people, it makes for happier people. When you can hear people disagree with you and not have a meltdown emotionally, that makes you a happier and stronger person. It makes you a stronger thinker. It makes you a stronger advocate for what you believe in. And so that's kind of the practical take to me away from those beautiful freedoms, including freedom of religion. By the way, you see study after study. I raise my kids Christian and conservative because that is what we truly believe. And also, if I looked at the data and decided that I wanted to raise happy, successful children, you would decide to raise them in faith and with traditional values. That is, and with a love for this country. Those are the keys to becoming a happy, healthy, successful adult. And I think many people would like to be that and are being told a story about how to get there that is leading them down a very bad path.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. It really is some real truths. So finally, we're talking a lot about our One Small Step campaign in America's Prosperity. What that means is, we look back through history and we look at all the one decision that somebody made to get involved, to try to change their nation, their state, their community, to get involved in some way, has a ripple effect throughout history. And there's tens of thousands of millions of examples of that changing our nation. And we're trying to encourage people this year, the 250th anniversary of America, to take that one small step. You know, if you're used to just like yelling at Fox News, maybe what Mary Catherine's saying, or you're yelling at something else, and you're complaining to your spouse that there's you stand up and make your voice heard. So one, how did you decide to take a step and get involved? And two, what would you say to people who, even if they're yelling at you on the TV, that they should get up off the couch and decide to take some action?
Yeah, well, don't hold it against me, but I'm a fourth-generation newspaper journalist, so I know. But when I became a journalist because I grew up in a news junkie household. And because I grew up in a news junkie household, before everything was quite as polarized, I was just paying attention to what was going on around me. I was paying attention to where laws came from, why they were written, why my parents were upset about something, what was the thing that was happening to my school that was being driven by a school board. I paid attention to those things, and I realized early that often the people in charge of making those decisions thought they were helping people but were actually hurting people. So I was around 8 when I looked around my public schools and was like, I'm not sure that this is working the way that it's supposed to. And I didn't realize that was an ideological realization. My first gig as a teenager was working for my dad, who was the editor of the paper, taking totals from a local election off a chalkboard and sending them via like very, very early internet on a tiny little device over to my dad in the newsroom. So I got kind of involved in the nitty-gritty of politics early and covering it. And then I would just say, once you have kids, like going to the state capitol this week, taking a day off work to stop those folks from hurting my children's education. I don't want to always be on defense, and I don't feel like I am. But in that case, like that was a one small step that actually made a difference in our lives in that week, told these people what they needed to hear, gave them the information about who they might hurt with this decision, and gave us more freedom in the process. And it was actually quite inspiring by the end of the week that I had done that, and then my kids have been able to write those letters to legislators to tell them what the dumb decisions you're making are affecting real people, and we are them.
That's wonderful. We have so many people in this room here, we saw in the video earlier, who did that same thing. Packed up their van with all their kids, came down here, went and met with legislators, stood in the lobby. And it's intimidating if you've never done it before, but it's so important. And fortunately, we got to see tangible results, pushing back against bad legislation. We just need to keep doing that. We need to keep pushing back. People, look, there's a lot of politicians who are excellent. There's a lot of great ones who are here today, but there's also a lot of ones who we need to help give them courage. We need to have their back, but we also need to hold other people accountable, the ones who are doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. Sometimes you just need to let them know, this is why this is a bad policy. You might not have understood it. Or let them know that there's their job could be in jeopardy if we band together and try to fight for what's right. So we're going to wrap up soon. So Mary Catherine, maybe send us off for any lasting words?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna read you guys a John Adams quote, because he's better than I am anyway. But I was reading this week, and I just will leave you guys with this. In such great changes and commotions, individuals are but atoms. He was writing to Abigail when he said this. It is scarcely worthwhile to consider what the consequences will be to us. What will be the effects upon present and future millions and millions of millions is a question very interesting to benevolence, natural and Christian. God grant they may, and I firmly believe they will, be happy. To me, it's so moving to think about John Adams doing this audacious thing in 1776. This week is when he wrote this letter to Abigail when he was traveling down to Congress. He was thinking about us in this room. He thought about the millions of millions that these decisions would affect, that the gift of liberty would change our lives, and we get to do the work of preserving that. So it's a pretty great gig.
Mary Catherine, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you all for being here today.
Our next speaker needs no introduction here in Central Illinois, and frankly, I've known him too long to say anything nice about him. But I will say this, we miss his principled leadership in Congress a whole bunch here in Central Illinois. Please join me in welcoming former Congressman Rodney Davis.
All right, happy 250th, America. Come on. Let's also give thanks, because I got to tell you, I've planned a lot of these events in my career, and I know how hard everyone with AFP has worked. So, give a big round of applause to Kent Strang, to Jason Heffley, and also the man with 11 kids, David Fromm, and the entire crew. Thank you. This has been great. It's great to hear the speakers before us, like Mary Catherine talked about John Adams, our forefathers, and 250 years ago. I don't know if our forefathers would have thought that our next guest and I would have had a chance to be two of 435 people in our nation to be able to cast a vote in the United States House of Representatives. I mean, it's a privilege for me as a kid. Throughout my career, I love coming back to the convention center because I don't think our forefathers would have known that I would see my first rock concert here at Prairie Capitol Convention Center. And I don't know how they would have reacted to the band Quiet Riot. But you know what? Things changed in 250 years, and people, all of you, and many of your friends and family gave me the opportunity to serve. And during that opportunity to serve, I got to meet a lot of good people that I served with. And our next guest is not one of them. He's one of the best. I got to tell you one story, though, that you may not know about Jason Chaffetz. Jason played college football too, and unlike Brian Urlacher, he didn't make it to the NFL. But Jason played for the Brigham Young Cougars in the 1980s. As a matter of fact, he was a kicker. A lot of people in football make fun of kickers. I'm not one of them because I can't kick or play linebacker. I wish I could. But we had a linebacker here in Brian Urlacher, and we got a kicker coming up in Jason Chaffetz. And there's one thing I want to tell you about my time in Congress. You need a lot of kickers, because what they do is they don't get out on the field a lot, but when they do, everyone's looking at them. And you got to know when to perform, and you got to know when to make sure that you do your job well. And that, my friend, describes my time and my career getting to know my good friend, Jason Chaffetz. This is a guy who I love watching on Fox News, and I will text him now every time I see him on just to see if he looks at his phone while he's on the air. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm 250th to our country welcome to Jason Chaffetz.
Thank you. Thank you. It was such an honor and a privilege to serve in Congress, and I don't really miss it, but it was an honor. But you know what I do miss? I miss the camaraderie. I miss interacting with people like Rodney. Good, wholehearted Americans who believe in the United States of America. They believe in the red, white, and blue, and they would do anything to fight for and save this country. I can't say that about the rest of the Illinois delegation, but I can tell you this, Rodney is just one of the purest people and served with all of his heart, and it truly is amazing. I love being here with Brian Urlacher. I was a place kicker, as Rodney said. If they touch me, they throw a flag. So it's kind of the opposite of what Brian would do. Guys like him were coming after me, so I was highly incentivized to get that kick off and away as quickly as possible. We never lost a game by the margin of my missed kicks, by the way. If that had happened, I would have been, living in Colorado or Arizona or something like that. Could not stay in the state of Utah, that's for sure. A lot of good people who served this nation, and it really is amazing that we're going to have our 250th anniversary. But we got a lot of challenges ahead of us. I'm very grateful for so many things in my life. I grew up in an idyllic household. I had wonderful parents. My parents, they told me, they said, Jason, now listen, if there's ever anything that you need, anything at all, anything that you have to have, that you need to have, just let us know, because we will teach you how to live without it. And so it was a fairly conservative household, and I was glad for that. I It's interesting how life has changed. My wife's grandmother was born in 1899. She passed away in 2000. She literally touched 3 centuries. Unbelievable what she went through. You know, it used to be in this country that everybody had a horse and only the rich people had vehicles, right? They had cars. Now everybody's got a car and only the rich people have horses, right? I remember when our son, who's now a practicing attorney, we have 3 kids, they're all married. I come from Utah, so let me clarify. They're not married to each other, okay? They have their own separate families, and I have 6 grandkids at this point. It's unbelievable. I remember when our little son, our oldest child, was about 5 or 6 years old, and he came running around the corner, and he had this thing, and he said, "Mom, Dad, look at this great big CD." And I'm like, "That's a record, son." Like, did not know. And today, if you were to take that CD and run around the corner and say, "Look at this," you know, they'd be like, "What is that? What would you do with that? Where would you put it?" And so life changes, and it changes a lot. I remember one of my favorite memes. I hope I don't get in trouble for this one. One of the good things about the internet that I do like is this meme, and it's Howard Cosell. Okay, and for our younger people, Howard Cosell was like the sports broadcaster, and if it was a real sporting event, Howard Cosell was doing the play-by-play in his, you know, that bad-looking toupee and that distinctive Howard Cosell voice. But he is literally interviewing at the same time. He has 2 guests, O.J. Simpson and who's that other guy? Yeah, Bruce Jenner. At the same time. And of course the meme says, "Oh, how things are gonna change," you know, like, yikes. Well, things are gonna change in our world in a really fast pace, okay? Life is changing really fast. Here's what's important. We're talking about a lot of change that's going to cause a lot of consternation, and it's going to become very scary to a lot of people really fast. And that is artificial intelligence. AI, if you're not as familiar with it, is not just a tool, okay? It's not just something that is Google but better, okay? AI has the ability to take all of human intelligence, everything that's been written and said, and put it in and combine it in such a way that it actually gets to as close as you possibly can to actually thinking. And what is scary is the future, which is here today, is going to be very disruptive. And we have a choice as an American people as to how disruptive that's going to be for the older generations and for that new 18-year-old who's maybe trying to figure out where to go to college, what to study, what to do. Just a few years ago, we were saying, hey, we need all these programmers to deal with all this computer technology. Now they're saying, don't do that because AI can actually write apps and do things on its own. I tried it literally today in the hotel. And I said, and I described this app I wanted. 41 seconds later, it had written all the code that if I pasted it into my browser, would actually develop my own app the way I wanted to see it. 41 seconds. You have venture capitalists out there talking about what does life look like in the United States in a post-labor economy. That's pretty scary stuff. You can drive an autonomous vehicle. It's not long before there are autonomous wars. It's not long before there's autonomous aviation or trucking or name anything, and it begs the question, what's everybody going to do for work? What's everybody going to do for living? And true to the name of this organization, what's everybody going to do for prosperity? So it's not to scare everybody, but it's also to understand that we got to take the principles that we lived on for the last 250 years that founded this country. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That prosperity is not a bad word. But one thing I learned in Congress, and I'm sure Rodney and everybody else kind of got the sense too. When I went to Congress, I really did think that everybody there wanted to have the same conclusion. They just had different ways of getting there. I left Congress thinking, no, that's not true. There are too many people out there that want to sow chaos. They want to divide this country. They don't believe in prosperity. They believe in this collectivism. They believe that everybody should have the same end, the same consequence. Now, to me, I call that, Marxism. I call that a lot of things, but it's not the United States of America. There are far too many out there that want to sow division. There is this degree of nihilism that's out there. Being Abraham Lincoln, I want to tell you just two quick things, and we'll wrap up here. There was a really interesting thing that happened in this country. And it happens again and it repeats itself. And it is this nihilism. Now, I happened to be at Utah Valley University when Charlie Kirk was shot. I saw him get assassinated. And I don't want to relive that moment. It was one of the most horrific, scariest things I've ever witnessed, from basically here to that door. My wife was there, my daughter was there, son-in-law was there. You didn't know if there was going to be another shot that rang out. Thought maybe it was going to be a mass casualty event, and it was as scary as I've ever had in my life. If you look back through history, part of it happens right here in this town. When the Civil War was concluded, and it was days later, and it was Abraham Lincoln that was at Ford's Theater, and he was assassinated. What happened? You had John Wilkes Booth jump from that second floor onto the stage. He thought that the world, that the audience, that everybody was going to applaud, that he had saved the world, that he was going to bring the United States together by assassinating the President of the United States. And those couple weeks where he was in hiding and running, he kept getting newspapers. He really thought he was heroic. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, there were a lot of people that thought, oh, we've saved the nation. We're going to change the world. Everybody's going to think this is great. There are people out there that think they can attack ICE and throw chaos and get in their way and dox them and throw bricks at them and make life a living hell for them, thinking that the world was going to be attracted to that, that their countrymen, their fellow men and women of this country would think that that's a great thing. That was never true. Wasn't true with Lincoln, wasn't true with Charlie. It's not true with ICE. And if we sat here, we could go through numerous example after example. But here's what it does show. It does show that we are not going to be a divided country. We're going to be the United States of America. And no matter what challenges, we're going through this right now about, do we need an identification to vote, to demonstrate who we are? So there are a lot of people that want to divide our country. But the wisdom, the brilliance of the United States of America is our Constitution. I heard this Justice Scalia talk about this. He said the brilliance of my words, not his, he's much more eloquent. The brilliance of the Constitution isn't necessarily any one of the Bill of Rights, not the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. It's the idea that the power is in the people. The power is in you, okay? The power is in groups just like this all across the country. And that one small step that we talk about, okay, that you hear about, you see on the shirts, you see it, that's not just some slogan. That means that we as Americans need to step up and do our part in our neighborhood all across this country. That's the way this country works. I think perhaps my favorite quote of, well, there's many. Maybe it's not the favorite, but it's right up there, is what Abraham Lincoln said. Abraham Lincoln said, "You don't make a weak man strong by making a strong man weak." Okay? You don't make a weak man strong by making a strong man weak. That's what I think, if we really talked about and discussed rooms like this, you have to understand that prosperity and the opportunity, that life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all of those things, they don't just spontaneously happen. We are given gifts from God. We have rights that are ordained not from our government, but they come from God. And that we, as a people, have to exercise those rights. We have to lead and show people one small step at a time. Lead from your heart, talk from your heart, explain to people why you believe what you believe. Be sincere with your neighbor, not just because you want to vote, not just because you're supporting a particular candidate, but because you believe in the United States of America, that you do believe in freedom and prosperity, and that these things that we fight for, we do so because we know in our heart it's going to help the United States of America. So let's take a moment for the 250th anniversary, wave that flag. Don't let anybody ever get between you and the flag of the United States of America. Wear it proudly. Share that with the next generation. Take that one small step in your own neighborhood and get others to do the same. And we'll be just fine. Despite AI and all these other things, we will persevere. We will overcome. May God bless you. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
All right, we're to the end. Thank you all again for being here tonight. Before we go, I do want to very briefly thank my team, especially Grace Latz, who has been punished for me agreeing to do this. Thank you, Grace. I also want to thank, we're a small team in here in Illinois. We have 6 people. I want to thank our neighbors from around the country. We put up a call that we needed help because we had a bunch of people coming to Springfield. And people came from across the country. We have people from Florida, Indiana, Kentucky. I shouldn't have started this. Iowa, there's a big contingent, Iowa, Missouri. So thank all of you very much for coming. And my biggest thank you goes to Amanda and Holly from our national team, who we couldn't have done this without. So thank you both very much. I hope you all have found this conversation inspiring tonight. Hope it was a little bit different than normal events that we go to. We hope this event underscores a timeless truth. America's promise is preserved not by power, but by people willing to act. It is the people in this room who make freedom possible. Even here in Illinois, where freedom often feels under attack, we have proven that many small steps together can lead to big wins. We encourage all of you to join us and take one small step with AFP. You'll see QR codes. Please take a second and join us.